All right, it looks like we're live and recording now. So, hello everyone watching. We are starting a community stand-up monthly for now for Azure PowerShell and .NET. And why doesn't everyone just introduce themselves real quick in this first one, and then we'll get going. So I'm sitting here. I'm the PM on Azure PowerShell and .NET.
I'm Cormac, dev on PowerShell and .NET.
I'm Mark. I'm a dev on PowerShell and .NET.
I'm Scott. I'm the engineering manager on PowerShell and .NET.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We also we have a fifth, Abhijit. He's here in spirit. Maybe I'll get up and force him to come in here in a little bit. So to start out, I think we wanted to cover what we released in our February release, which was on February 20th. We had two kind of bigger features. That's the managed disks, which actually was part of a gallery release, right? On, when was that? The 8th? You guys remember?
Yeah, it was around the 8th.
I think it was around the 8th. And then Network Watcher was the other big part of that. What else went out with the 20th besides Network Watcher and managed disks? Mostly small stuff.
So besides Network Watcher and managed disks, well, one of the cool things you can do when you look at the release is actually go to the Azure RM module and see the release notes, which kind of tell you the things that changed. So basically, new commandlets, bug fixes, that kind of stuff.
Are we able to pull that up right now? Can we check it out?
Yeah, give me just a second.
I'm gonna make you do that, Mark. I guess I could do it too. So, and I think one of the bigger reasons we did the release notes is because of feedback that we got from the community about not always being kind of quite aware of what's changed between one version and the next. So we started doing pretty detailed release notes to try to make sure that the community understands how Azure PowerShell is changing, what types of issues we're responding to, and things like that.
Yeah, correct. I was gonna go over that when we sort of started talking about new stuff, but we can do it now because this is a good time. Let me share my screen so you can see where you can find this stuff on the module. So this is the Azure RM module. Azure RM is a roll-up module. It basically contains references to all of the individual modules for individual services. And the release notes for Azure RM contain the release notes for the modules that are pushing up together. Now, when I go to this page, it's actually showing me 3.5 for some reason, which I'm not sure of, but this is 3.6, so this is the latest release. So the 3.5 release, that's the gallery release that Aaron was talking about that was just for managed disks. So this new one contains all of those changes, plus it looks like there's some changes to the analysis services commandlets, some changes to the DSC extension and Chef extension for compute. There were some fixes for data factories, a few new commandlets for data lake analytics, the whole set of Network Watcher commandlets.
Yeah, there's the big ones right there.
And then some other features, like it looks like we added route filter support, which is kind of neat.
Nice.
And then it looks like some just miscellaneous fixes here for Key Vault and for SQL and for storage. So quite a few things, mostly a bunch of bug fixes, and yeah, Network Watcher and the first major release that included managed disks are kind of the big thing for that release.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for showing us that. And I think one thing that we want to call out, and we'll continue to call this out, is that the Azure PowerShell is kind of a federated model. We own the core components, but each resource provider owns their individual commandlets. And so in the future, we might start to involve them to discuss some of their changes in depth. But I think for now, Cormac had a little bit to talk about what the managed disk changes are. So do you want to talk about those a little bit, Cormac?
Yeah, sure. So earlier this month or last month, managed disk was introduced, which is basically a way to create VMs without using storage accounts. So compute handles all of that for you. And so with that, they have new top-level resources like disk, snapshot, images. And so the compute team went out of their way and created PowerShell commandlets for CRUD operations for all three of those top-level resources. So you can do git, new, update, remove for all of those top-level resources, and a bunch of configuration commandlets that go with it, all outlined in the blog post that came with managed disk and outlined in the markdown help files that have been provided with the commandlets that you can find by doing git help with those commandlets or on the compute folder in our repository. Probably, in my opinion, the best way to see the help to figure out how to use these commandlets is to do git help and then star disk star or star image star snapshot star. So that'll give you, or Azure RM disk, Azure RM star, stuff like that. So that you can figure out what these new commandlets do. You can see the examples that are provided,
which ones are available, things like that.
So it gives the users a better idea of how to use it since they're new. A lot of people don't know how to tackle new commandlets when they're first introduced. So I think going to the help either via the markdown files that are provided in the repository or on the docs website or get help from PowerShell. Those are the best ways to approach them and see what you can do with those commandlets.
I think it's also a pretty major shift, and Mark and Scott, you can correct us if we're wrong. It's a major shift for the compute team too, because those all of the compute commandlets, especially like creating new VMs, etc., use managed disks by default now, correct?
I believe that that's correct.
Yeah, and so then they provided some of those CRUD operations for the images, the snapshots, etc. But as far as I understand, you get a managed disks by default when you create new ARM VMs, which is pretty cool. So did we have anyone, did we want to talk about the network watcher changes in depth, kind of like just not in depth, what the major difference is there, or what users should expect to see whenever they use network watcher, or might that be something we need a network person to talk about?
Well, I think actually going through the commandlet help for network watcher, if somebody really wants to know what it's about, is kind of the best thing to get started.
Yeah.
To get started with. And I believe that help should be up on docs.microsoft.com as well as shipped with the commandlets at this point. So you could find it out either way. But as I understand Network Watcher, it essentially lets you turn on logging for different kinds of network objects and store those logs to different places in Azure, like, for example, storage accounts and that kind of stuff. But for more details, you really should go to the help.
And Scott brings up, Mark brings up a good point that the documentation can also be found on docs.microsoft.com. And we're in our next section when we talk about the future. I'll talk about that a little bit, because the docs are going to be changing rapidly over the next month. So I think all of us are really excited about those changes. And I've been actively engaging our documentation team to try to make sure that lands as soon as possible. For everyone's benefit, including ours. Okay, cool. Do we have anything else that we want to discuss for changes over the last month before we dive into some of the things we're looking at going into the future?
Well, I could talk a little bit about sort of the way that we've changed the module definition and why people care about that. We touched on it a little bit, but I think it'd be good to kind of go over.
Cool. Yeah, let's go over that. That sounds awesome.
All right, so let me share my screen. And I'm going to show you
while you're sharing your screen, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to force the video to stay on your screen. So even if we talk, it won't split away to us.
Okay. So what I'm showing here is the Azure storage module. And you can see a few things about it here. One is, as we showed before, it's got detailed release notes. So you can tell what this version of the module actually has and why you might want to download it. This comes from a lot of feedback that we got that we got from customers that it would really be useful to actually delineate the changes in the module definition like this. So when they look at it in the gallery, they can see it. When they use gallery commands to reflect over the modules in the gallery, they can get some idea of what the changes are that they're taking up. Another big thing that you'll see here is that the list of commandlets appears in the module. This is something that we did over the last couple of months, and this goes a long way toward improving the installation experience of the module. So you should be seeing that the modules are faster to actually integrate once they've downloaded when you do install module from the gallery, and that's a big thing. And let's see, Cormac, can you think of anything else that we've done in the last month that we should highlight?
Not off the top of my head. I believe those are the main things that we approached this month in February.
Yeah. So the other kind of big ticket change that I can think of is switching help to Markdown. So what this means, this is actually what Aaron's talking about with docs.microsoft.com, because we switched our main help to Markdown help. It means that the stuff that's up in docs.microsoft.com can accurately reflect what's the help that's actually installed with the modules. It also means that it's easier for people who are really interested in the commandlets to come to our GitHub repo and contribute changes if they see issues with the help. So,
Mark, you're sharing right now. Would you mind showing us one of those Markdown files just real quick in the repository? Because I know we have a lot of users that want to contribute, especially some of our more power users. They may notice an issue and want to file an issue, but some people also like to just contribute straight to the documentation.
So first, you can see that this is our PowerShell repo. So for our GitHub repo. So for those who don't know, it's github.com/Azure PowerShell, as we're showing up here. And if we go into the source, the way this is managed inside source, we have the old RDFE commandlets here and the new resource manager commandlets here. And if I go into one of these things, like let's say compute, and commands.compute and help, what you'll see is there's a markdown file for every commandlet. And because it's markdown, I can look at it, and the view in GitHub is very similar to what I'm actually going to see if I do help on this command. So let's see if I can actually show you of what this looks like. If I say help add Azure RM and VHD. You can see that the help is actually fairly similar looking to the stuff that's there, especially if I do the dash full, which will show me examples and all of the stuff that I get for the help.
Nice.
So this is kind of what these look like, and because this is a GitHub repo and this is a Markdown file that's easy to look at, you can actually contribute contributions just by editing the file, and you can see that the formatting in these things is pretty simple for people who aren't real familiar with Markdown.
Yeah, awesome. And like we had touched on before, there's lots of work underway to move docs in a complete direction, I guess. So it'll be a lot easier to navigate. There'll be some conceptual articles there. So I'll skip over that when we talk about future stuff, but just one thing that we're driving really hard right now is better docs, at least from the PowerShell standpoint. We want to invest a lot in that moving forward.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that we could talk about for stuff that we've done lately is it has to do with breaking changes. So we've made a real conscious effort since fall of last year to make sure that we're not shipping breaking changes in the modules, and that we let people know in advance what parts of the API are going to break. So we haven't shipped any breaking changes, like I said, since October. And the next time we're planning on shipping breaking changes would be around the build time frame. That's according to our current plans.
Yep.
And you should actually, everything that's going to break, there should already be notifications. Actually in deprecation of the commandlets to show that so you know what to expect.
And mitigations, right?
Sorry, what did you say, Scott?
Mitigations.
Yeah, when the breaking changes actually come out, one of the things that we did the last time we shipped breaking changes was to have a detailed migration guide. So you can go look at the migration guide, and it shows exactly what kinds of things in your scripts need to be changed and how they need to change to deal with the breaking changes. So you can see whether the breaking changes even apply to you. Cool.
So I think at least for the next few minutes, let's talk about some of the stuff we're looking at in the future. It might be nice to switch gears here for a second, since the most recent thing we've been doing this last week has been moving or ensuring that all of our management plane .NET SDKs and all of our data plane .NET SDKs are moving to .NET Core. So I think Cormac did some work on the Hayek-based libraries, and then Abhijit did some work on the Swagger-based libraries. If you don't know what we're talking about with Hayek and Swagger, then that's definitely something we can talk about in the comments, so that we don't have to spend too much time on that here. But do we have anything to add on the move to .NET Core for those libraries?
Well, so I want to be clear. We've been supporting .NET Core for about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
It's what we're doing is across the board support for .NET Core. So support for across the board for ARM, the management plane libraries.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
And not just across the board support for that, but also that will be compatible with the upcoming VS 2017 release and the very newest
tool set
tools that are shipping with that as well. So when people get the new VS 2017, they should expect that they'll be able to use our libraries to write applications with it without any kind of problem from day one.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about, since that's it's not necessarily future, since the work is basically done, but it's going to be landing this week. So it's kind of future. It's been hot on our minds recently. So, okay. And then on PowerShell, what should we talk about first, do you think?
Well, I think the biggest future thing for customer impact wise is the work that we're doing. On the runtime. If we think about our modules right now, every module that we have is pegged to a particular version of the runtime, and that causes problems. People will often see, if they install one version of the modules and then partially install a newer version, sometimes you'll get a problem where you log in and then you try to run a commandlet and it tells you need to log in again.
Yeah.
And that's happening because that runtime between those two modules is a different version, and so the login doesn't actually translate from one to the other. Yeah. So a big change that we're making there is to make that runtime backward compatible, so that even if you mix and match different versions of modules that released at different times, you'll be able to use them together with a single login. And in terms of the issues that we've had from customers, that's kind of the one with the biggest impact and has the most has kind of the most people who have reported that.
Yeah, because we have users that basically base scripts off of a certain API version, and we want to make sure that those scripts can continue to work as needed, but there won't be any login problems if you need to use different API versions at the exact same time, right?
Yeah. So anybody who's used one of the sovereign clouds will know that it's sometimes a little bit difficult to figure out exactly which version of PowerShell works with it. So part of what this is enabling is that people can have versions of the commandlets that work with one sovereign cloud, and a version that works with another sovereign cloud, and be able to use those on the same box, and have the runtimes be compatible for those.
And then the user doesn't necessarily need to have any knowledge on which API versions are available in which cloud. They just need to say, I'm targeting this cloud, and everything should just kind of fall into place.
So that isn't where we are right now, as people
yeah.
do that, but that is the future. The future is
that's the future.
The future is if I point at a cloud that I automatically load up commandlets that are compatible with that cloud.
Yeah, cool. When do we expect users to see this kind of general time frame? What are we looking at here?
Well, we are about to put out some modules that help you to do some of this stuff called AzureRM.Bootstrapper.
Yep.
That should be coming out sometime near the end of next week or so people can sort of see the beginning of this experience. And then as we get past the May release, we'll start to see this getting into the main Azure PowerShell train.
Yeah, cool. One comment that I would make that we can talk about just in full transparency is that, if people have comments on what that package looks like now early on, they can provide comments, and we can pivot on that before May. That's kind of the general outline of it, but part of the reason why we release things early is for users to give us feedback, for customers to give us feedback on the types of work that we're doing to ensure that it's positive for their experiences.
Yeah, and we definitely want feedback from this stuff. You can provide feedback through the PowerShell gallery. Actually, you can provide feedback on GitHub by pushing issues. And what other kinds of feedback mechanisms are we pushing with? Are we asking customers to use?
Those are probably the two best. I love seeing issues that we can easily dole out to either ourselves or partner teams. But as we do these stand-ups, it's not a bad idea to write comments on the YouTube videos, and I'll be sure to keep them in the back of my mind as people make comments. I'll respond, and then we can kind of pivot based on the feedback that we get in these stand-ups, which is the biggest reason why we're doing them right now.
Yeah, that brings me to the other future thing that we're thinking about, which is when we think about soliciting comments for things. One of the features that we're going to start enabling is preview modules. So we're going to make it possible for our partners to push out modules that maybe do some experimental things with the commandlets, make changes that they want to get feedback about, or make features that aren't generally available to everyone available. And we're making those separate from the main Azure RM module. So people using Azure RM will still get the same stable experience with GA'd services. People who want to get sort of these new experimental features can install a module on top of Azure RM for a feature like, if they want the latest one for compute, it'll be installing the compute.preview module. And then they can use the experimental commandlets on an opt-in basis. So we're kind of excited about that, because not only does it allow us to make those to sort of get more feedback from our community earlier on when we're writing commandlets, but also it means that people who just want to write scripts and want to have a stable experience will automatically get that. They have to opt in if they want to get the experimental stuff.
Yeah, so it's a good way for us to solicit feedback early and kind of present the direction that we're going without necessarily forcing users into it. It's a very opt-in model. You have to choose to install that preview module. When do we think, like, what kind of time frame are we looking at there? I know we talked about Bootstrapper is kind of coming out preview-ish in the coming weeks, and then solidified in May. What kind of timeline are we looking at for preview modules?
So for preview modules, we're also looking at the May timeframe. So May is sort of like is our release, like we said, that has breaking changes. So a lot of these kind of fundamental changes require us to go through that breaking change release.
Yeah, and one other thing I think before we move on, I'd like to talk about some issues, Mark, that you had identified as I think issues that we want to present to the community as things that we're thinking about, but kind of parallel to the discussion for .NET Core client libraries. We're also targeting kind of the build timeframe, the May timeframe for PowerShell Core. So I think that's something. Do we have a lot to add there, or do we kind of want to wait on that one?
So I mean, people probably may be aware that we already have a PowerShell Core set of commandlets that we released in preview. So the idea is to have a more complete offering for all the ARM commandlets, and then to have that actually shipped at the same time as we do desktop. And eventually, we'd like to merge those. So essentially, we have one package that will work in both places. So I don't want to promise things about release date when we talk about when that's going to happen, but you should expect after build to start. You should expect in May to start seeing this.
Yes,
and then in the second half of the year, we should be doing this where. When we release, and you can use things on .NET Core, and you can use them on .NET Desktop.
And that includes PowerShell Core and PowerShell Desktop, basically.
Correct. Yes. So, do we want to talk about some of the other issues that are on our radar?
Yeah.
So, a couple of the big customer issues that are on our radar that we're looking to fix, kind of after the May timeframe, are asynchronous commandlets. So one of our biggest asks is being able to run some long-running operations like resource deployments and VM creation asynchronously and run other commandlets while this is going on. So we're defining a pattern that we want commandlets to use for this, and we're making this a first-class deliverable, meaning that we need to do real preparation testing.
Yeah,
and also some a few changes to the runtime to enable seamless usage in PowerShell jobs. So that's a big thing that piece of feedback we've heard, and we're acting on. We're acting on after that. The other kind of big things are around consistency. So consistency of commandlets. Making sure that commandlets use parameters consistently and that they are compliant with PowerShell norms and best practices.
Yeah.
So working with the PowerShell team to actually identify the issues there and work those issues down. So there are some big things that we did in the last 6 months to make strides there. We know we have more to do, and we should look for more of that.
Yeah, so I think one thing that I'd like to discuss, just because we have an opportunity and a platform here to talk about things with our customers, is what is kind of the thought process for our team around when we choose to implement these fixes for, say, asynchronous commandlets and for conventions. Like, what kind of thought process do we go through when we decide what to do next?
Well, honestly,
I'm putting you on the spot.
There's sort of two things. What I would like the answer to be is, when we see the thing that customers want the most and has the most kind of reports, and we think has the most impact, that's the thing we work on next.
Yep.
But in reality, we have things that we need to support Azure as a platform.
Exactly.
And as important as all the things that we do with commandlets are, the most important thing that we can do for our users, from our perspective, is to make services available, make tools for the services available as those services get available. And so that's always our primary mission. And anything we need to do to further that kind of trumps most of the usability kinds of issues that we see. So that's why you see this sort of runtime issues and PowerShell Core coming up first. And then the thing that everybody wants, the asynchronous commands, coming up a little after that.
Yeah, and I think that's that's kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about just a little bit. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like our primary concern is to support Azure as a platform, and probably the biggest piece of that is to support individual services and resources as best we can. And as long as their functionality is available, we can at least provide that that interaction mechanism for Azure PowerShell users. And then we can pick up the customer concerns once we ensure that the Azure platform is well, what's the word? Well
represented.
What'd you say, Mark?
Well represented.
Well represented, well covered. And so I think you really talked about the biggest priority there. Can you manage your assets, your resources properly through Azure PowerShell? And I think we recognize customer concerns and we want to respond to them well. And that's why we do want to do more of these to get some of the feedback on the big issues that we talked about. So asynchronous commandlets, Azure or PowerShell jobs, which is kind of those go hand in hand. And then consistency across the commandlets are kind of always on the front of our mind here as we move forward. So you guys have anything else to add before we close up for this session?
I just want to reiterate it. Give us your feedback. It helps us prioritize things, whether that's in GitHub, following up the Slack channel. But I want to have the problem of too much feedback coming in.
I agree. I think that's a great sentiment, Scott. Give us your feedback.
Absolutely.
If we don't, our job is to respond to it as best as we can. And so please provide as much feedback as possible, and we'll do our best to respond both in the product and in some of our community outreach initiatives like these stand-ups. Anything else? Feedback
And cookies.
All right, cool. Let's close for this session, and let's plan on doing another one in about a month. But otherwise, I think if you have any feedback, please provide it to us via whatever platform you are most comfortable with, and we'll make sure to respond as best we can. Cool. I'm excited about our next month. We'll see you then. Goodbye. You guys want to say bye? You want to get your screen on the you want to be the last ones?
Goodbye from a focus room near you.